She walked in slowly, her steps unsure, her clothes worn but clean, and her eyes filled with quiet determination. No one paid her much attention at first, just another elderly woman, maybe lost, maybe just browsing. But when she asked to see the latest model, the room changed. Salesmen exchanged glances, smirks passed between them. One even chuckled under his breath. "Ma'am, this place isn't for window shopping," someone said, barely hiding their amusement. She tried to explain. She was polite, calm, but they dismissed her, told her to leave. One even walked her out the door, as if she didn't belong. The security cameras caught it all, the embarrassed look on her face, the way she glanced back one last time, then slowly disappeared down the street. But what they didn't know was that she wasn't just any old woman, and she hadn't come by mistake. Because the very next morning, just as the dealership staff settled in with their coffee and morning banter, a silver Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the front doors. The engine purred like a beast waiting to be noticed. The chauffeur stepped out first, then opened the rear door, and out stepped a tall, older gentleman dressed in an elegant tailored suit. No one recognized him, yet, but he asked for the manager by name. And he wasn't there to buy a car. He was there to make a statement. What happened next left the entire dealership speechless and made everyone rethink how they treat people who walk through their doors. This is a story about respect, judgment, and a powerful lesson no one at that dealership will ever forget. But to understand what really happened, we need to go back to the moment she walked in. The day before the Rolls-Royce arrived, it had been just another busy afternoon at the dealership. The staff were focused on their usual routine, selling dreams to those who looked the part. The woman who walked in didn't. She wore a plain cardigan, sensible shoes, and carried a worn leather purse. Her grey hair was neatly tied back, and she moved with the quiet grace of someone used to being overlooked. She walked up to one of the polished new cars on display, gently ran her fingers along the edge, and asked a nearby salesman a simple question: "Does this one come in black?" He barely looked at her before replying, "Ma'am, these cars aren't for everyone." A few others standing nearby laughed. She didn't argue. She simply smiled, nodded, and walked out as calmly as she'd walked in. But what they didn't know was who she really was. Her name was Evelyn, and she wasn't interested in impressing anyone. What the staff didn't see was the strength behind her quiet eyes, or the life she'd lived. Evelyn had grown up with little, but together with her husband, she had built a business from the ground up. Years of hard work, long nights, and sacrifices had led to a quiet fortune, one they never felt the need to show off. They believed in staying humble. But that day, something changed. That humiliation, being laughed at for not looking the part, cut deep. When she got home, she told her husband Thomas. He listened without saying much, just nodded slowly, stood up, and made a phone call. The next morning he arrived, not just to buy a car, but to show them something far more valuable. But before we get to that moment, let's take a step back to where it all began. Years earlier, Evelyn and Thomas had started with nothing but a borrowed truck and a small warehouse. They sold hardware supplies to construction crews, driving long distances every week just to make ends meet. Over time, that honesty and hard work earned them a loyal customer base. As years passed, they expanded into property, quietly buying land and developing rental homes. There were no headlines, no flashy announcements, just steady growth and smart choices. But none of that mattered when Evelyn walked into that dealership. In those few minutes, everything she had built was dismissed because of how she looked. And that wasn't the first time it had happened. All her life, she had seen people judge others by appearances. But this time, the disrespect struck something different, because it wasn't just about her. It was about every quiet, hard-working person who'd ever been told they didn't belong. At the dealership, the sales manager, Rick, had brushed off the incident. "Probably just an old lady trying to kill time," he joked in the break room. A few younger staff laughed, not realizing one of the cleaning crew had overheard everything. That worker, Maya, had seen Evelyn's face when she walked out, how she held her head high even though her hands trembled. Later that day, Maya searched the woman's description online, curious. What she found shocked her. A small business empire registered under Evelyn and Thomas's names, with real estate holdings, investments, even charity work for senior care programs. Meanwhile, at home, Evelyn sat by the window, watching the driveway. Thomas had said he'd take care of it, but hadn't explained how. And in the back of her mind, she wondered, was he going to confront them, or show them something they'd never forget? The answer was on its way. The next morning, the staff at the dealership were back to business as usual, polishing cars, reviewing sales sheets, and prepping for another day of high-end clients. Rick, the manager, stood by the front desk sipping his coffee, still unaware of what was coming. Outside, the clouds hung low, the sky heavy with a quiet tension, almost like it sensed what was about to unfold. Then, without warning, the soft purr of a Rolls-Royce engine broke the silence. Heads turned as a luxury car pulled into the lot, smooth and slow, gleaming under the grey sky. It wasn't just the car that caught everyone's attention. It was the way it moved, deliberate and confident, as if it knew it didn't need to prove anything. The driver stepped out first, opening the rear door with precision, and out came Thomas. He didn't wear expensive labels or flash jewelry. His presence was calm but powerful. He glanced around slowly, taking in the stunned expressions of the staff. Most of them didn't recognize him, but Rick's smile faded when he saw Evelyn step out behind him, her hand gently resting on Thomas' arm. Whispers rippled through the room. The same woman they had mocked and turned away now stood in front of them, not asking for attention, but commanding it without saying a word. Thomas asked for the manager. His tone was polite but firm. Rick stepped forward, a nervous laugh escaping him, like he wasn't sure if this was some kind of setup. But Thomas didn't smile. He simply handed Rick a card. "I believe you met my wife yesterday." Silence fell. Every eye in the room was on them. The air was thick with unease, and what Thomas said next would change the dealership's future forever. Rick stared at the card in his hand, his face pale. It wasn't just a business card. It had the logo of a private investment firm printed in gold, one known for acquiring commercial properties. Below it, in clean black type, was Thomas's name, listed as the managing partner. Before Rick could speak, Thomas continued, calm as ever. "This location," he said, glancing around the glass showroom, "is part of a strip we've had our eye on for some time. We closed the deal last week. Papers went through yesterday." Murmurs echoed across the room. The sales team shifted uncomfortably, trying to process what they were hearing. "Wait, this dealership?" one of them whispered. Thomas nodded. "The entire block. Your lease was up for renewal next month. We've decided not to extend it." Rick opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He glanced around, suddenly aware that the same staff who had laughed at Evelyn the day before were now dead silent. The tension was thick, the kind that made people hold their breath without realizing it. But Thomas wasn't finished. "See, when you judged my wife based on how she looked, you weren't just rude. You made a decision about her worth. You decided she wasn't important enough to serve, and that's a choice that comes with consequences." Evelyn said nothing, only meeting Rick's eyes with the same quiet strength she had walked in with the day before. But just as Thomas turned to leave, the second twist arrived. A sharply dressed woman walked in behind them. She was from corporate, sent by the luxury brand's regional office, and she wasn't here for a visit. She had seen the footage, and what she was about to announce would shake the dealership from the inside out. The woman from corporate stepped forward, clipboard in hand, her expression serious. The dealership staff recognized her immediately, Miss Patel, the regional director. She wasn't known for surprise visits, and never for casual ones. "I received a copy of yesterday's security footage," she said clearly, her voice cutting through the silence. "We review all reports involving customer service issues, especially when they go against company values." She turned to Rick, who was now sweating under the collar of his suit. "The way your team treated this customer was unacceptable. And frankly, it's not the first complaint we've received about your leadership." Everyone stood frozen. No one moved. "As of this morning, your management contract has been terminated," she added. "We'll be placing the branch under direct oversight while we transition to new leadership. Effective immediately." Rick stammered, trying to defend himself, but Miss Purtell raised her hand. "This brand is built on respect. Luxury means nothing if we treat people like they don't matter." Thomas and Evelyn said nothing. Their presence alone was enough. And just as Thomas nodded politely and turned to leave, Miss Purtell looked at him. "Mr. Sterling, if your firm does complete the acquisition of this property, we'd be happy to collaborate. It's rare to see people stand for something so quietly, yet so powerfully." But as the couple walked toward the exit, Evelyn paused. She turned back to Maya, the cleaning staff member who had stood by silently. Evelyn smiled, walked over, and gently pressed something into her hand. It was a sealed envelope. Maya looked inside after they left. It held a handwritten note and a check, enough to cover a year of college tuition. The dealership may have judged the wrong woman, but she never stopped seeing the right people. In the weeks that followed, the dealership's story spread quickly, not just in local news, but across social media. People were stunned at how one quiet moment of disrespect turned into a powerful lesson about humility, kindness, and how far dignity can truly go. The story of the old woman in the car dealership and the Rolls-Royce visit became a reminder that you never know who you're speaking to, and that true wealth isn't always worn on the outside. Under new leadership, the dealership changed its tone completely. Staff were retrained, policies were reworked, and a new message was placed at the front desk. Everyone deserves respect, no exceptions. Customers noticed. Sales eventually recovered, but the culture had shifted for good. As for Maya, she used the gift Evelyn left her to enroll in college part-time. She sent a thank you letter, not expecting a reply. But a month later, a small package arrived. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a note from Evelyn. Asterisk for the one who saw me when no one else did. Asterisk. Thomas and Evelyn returned to their quiet life. They didn't want fame, recognition, or headlines. All they had hoped for was a reminder, to the world, and maybe even to themselves, that respect matters, no matter what car you drive or how much money you have in your pocket. In a world that often values image over character, this story stood out because it showed the opposite. A woman judged for her appearance, a dealership exposed for its prejudice, and a final act of generosity that proved true class comes not from wealth, but from the way you treat others. And sometimes, the ones you overlook end up teaching the most unforgettable lessons of all.